Hey guys, so I'm currently on my way to interview my friend Josie Grooms, who has been teaching ESL students in Memphis for the past 2 years or so, and I think she could have some really good insight about creativity.
Is cinematography important in this grade?
Can you get a shot
No.
of the sunset?
There we go. I'm here with my friend Josie Grooms, and I'm going to ask her a couple questions about creativity in the classroom. So, how have you used creativity to teach ESL kids?
Yeah, so I've been a teacher in Memphis for 2 years. My first year I taught 2nd grade. And one way that I used creativity, of course I let my students draw when we have free time, as well as when it's added in the curriculum. But one thing that stood out to me is that we had a student who didn't speak any English, and we suspected that he had some PTSD. And so he was able to draw it and express that, and we were able to send him to an Arabic-speaking counselor, which was his native language. And he would never been able to express that if it weren't for drawing. So I think it's really important to get kids to express their emotions, even if they can't express it in English. This past year I had a newcomer from Honduras who had a really, really hard transition. He was in 6th grade. Really hard transition into American school, and so after about 3 complete horrible days of failed teaching, I created an assignment in which they had to draw themselves, and inside the blank space of their profile head, fill in what made them themselves. But they couldn't use any words, they had to use only drawings. And so that was a great way to just see who he was. And I could tell he was really frustrated that he wasn't able to communicate with me, but we were able to communicate with each other through these drawings, as well as his classmates who didn't speak Spanish.
So we talked a little bit about how you use creativity to teach ESL kids, but what are some ways that you encourage creativity in the classroom?
Yeah, so 2 ways that I encourage creativity in the classroom is primarily through student choice as well as quality work boards. Student choice, that can be usually in units they have a culminating project, and in order to incorporate some student choice and to give some students autonomy, I let them choose what medium that they want to do their project through, whether that be a drawing, if they feel more comfortable, especially with my middle school students, making a presentation on the computer, or even if that's writing, or some kids like to write a poem. Might not really be a poem, but kids feel more comfortable expressing themselves, how they feel like their strengths in. And then another way I do is quality work boards, and half of the quality work board is for tests or assignments that they did well on. But a lot of students like to draw in their free time or color and give it to me as gifts, and so that's where I hang it. And a little praise goes a long way with those, and it just encourages kids more and more to have their outlets be creativity instead of fooling around in class.
Have you noticed, have they taken away arts at the school that you're teaching at? And is this a good way to kind of incorporate some arts into the general classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. So the curriculum that we used last year had a lot of art incorporated in it. As far as my school goes, we do have an art class that's on rotation. They go to it I think 2 times a week, and then when you're in middle school you can choose art as your elective. But I know kids really haven't had a positive experience in that, mostly because of the teacher. But this year we actually have a new art teacher, so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that.
Alright. Cross our fingers, hope for a good art teacher in Memphis. Thank you for joining us, Josie.
You're welcome.
The next person I interviewed is my friend Mary Heath, who is a teacher out in California. She didn't go to school to be a teacher. She went to school for English, but she found herself teaching and she loves it. So I wanted to ask her What are some ways that she encourages creativity in her classroom?
Well, I think that part of that is just giving a variety of ways to show that you have learned what I am trying to teach you. So I won't just give like a bunch of worksheet papers like over and over and over and over, because that breaks kids' souls. So I don't want to do that. I think that when I see their creativity the most is when I give assignments that are open-ended, like writing assignments or like movie creation assignments. I have a telenovela project that I have the juniors do for a couple weeks in the winter, and they really, really like that. So yeah, I think that the less structured you make something, the more students will feel free to do what they want to do or do something that they think is funny. It's kind of it can be a hard line to draw because you want them to show you that they've learned the things that you're trying to teach. But then as soon as you're like, I need it to have XYZ, then some students they like won't do anything more with it, So the more structured you make it, the more they'll be like, oh, all I need to do is this, 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 and then I will get the grade that I am satisfied with. Also, I'm goofy, so that lets them be goofy. Shush, Nick, I'm doing an interview.
What are a couple ways that you use music in your classroom?
Well, occasionally I will, if they're working on something, just play some music in the background, just to let us all kind of loosen up. I'd say that the most structured use of music that I have in the classroom is I stole this completely 100% from my high school Spanish teacher, but I will print out the lyrics of a song and then like omit different words, and then we will listen to it as a class, and they'll try to listen to the lyrics and fill in what they think they're saying, and the kids really like that. Sometimes it's frustrating if the tempo is fast, but they really get into the songs, and a lot of the times we'll sing them just like throughout the day, or come back to me and be like, oh, Guantanamera was stuck in my head all day. I'm like, awesome. This is just anecdotal and doesn't really pertain. It pertains, but it's not. You can cut all this out if you want to. But one time I played a song in class, and then the next day I was a little late to my own class, and as I was walking in, my students were literally like playing on guitar and on trombone the song that we had listened to the day before, and were like, okay, we can play this song. And I was like, whoa. So sometimes the kids really run with it, which is super fun.
I'm on my way to the Canal Street Tavern to see my friend Kane, who teaches photography at Ruskin Elementary in Dayton, Ohio. And right now it's masks on in Dayton, so he'll probably be masked up. So this is my buddy Kane. So Kane, what did you do at Ruskin Elementary?
Okay, so at Ruskin, I was the social emotional learning coordinator. So I'm responsible for a lot of disciplinary actions with students, restorative justice practices, integrating social emotional learning into the classroom, problem solving, and coming up with individualized behavioral plans that meet the students' needs according to their own individuality.
So were you responsible for like all grade levels?
Yeah, so that worked kindergarten through 6th grade. Really any time that there was a problem with a student, or if there was a major social issue in a whole class, I would handle it. Like I would say like one of the biggest things that I did this year, one of the 4th graders, Jeremy, she died in a bus crash, and I had to lead grief counseling for all of 4th grade for about a month by myself.
That's intense.
That was tough. There was a lot of learning for me in that experience as well.
Yeah. Did you use any of your like meditation techniques? I remember you leading some of that when we did Ruskin.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's like the foundation of everything I do. I was pulled up in the library, and that was just my space to change and mold as I wanted to. And when kids would come into the library, they would already be relaxed because they know that it's safe. They know that we're going to breathe. Anytime that I'm mediating a conflict or just having a conversation with a student, the first thing we always do, we sit down and we take some deep mindful breaths, because that's just going to lay the foundation for their brains to be open to communication and to be able to talk about hard things in a way that they normally would not. The Children's Rights project in Miracle Makers this year, I actually had the students, I gave them all their own photographs, and one of the issues that we were going to tackle is how dirty the school is, how unclean and unkempt, and how there's no visibility for how the actual conditions of the school. So the students had their own cameras. I sent them out several times each month to just go investigate on their own the conditions of the school, and so they would come back, disturbing photos. The bathrooms trash, mold, food. We actually found a homeless encampment on school property. There had been razors, beer, jugs of piss,
No way.
clothes, all that kind of stuff. And the whole purpose was to just kind of, take the top off of this and show everybody what is going on. We showed them to the principal, and he was embarrassed. Then the eventual plan with that project, we had printed off, every student had printed off 2 of the photos that they thought were the most important to be seen, and on the back they wrote about how they felt about what was in the photo and how it made them feel about themselves and their school, and we sent them to the superintendent.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm back here with Kane. And Kane, I wanted to ask you, how can creativity be used to fight racism?
Okay, so I think one of the fundamental roles of an artist in a revolutionary situation is to make the idea of revolution irresistible to the common person. So, that may be pamphlets, art, anything like that. Even the language that you use has its own poetic sense when you're talking about these things. And then, also going down to the level of students using their creativity to fight racism. Even though these kids are young and we don't really think of them as being punished by institutionalized racism as much as we would an adult, they do live with that pain, and they can use all kinds of creative outlets as a method of healing and just understanding and processing the things that have happened to them that maybe they weren't ready to face before.
Do you have any specific stories about any time any students really impressed you with their creativity in photography specifically?
Oh, every time. Just watching what a kid can do when you hand them a camera. When you don't put in all the rules and restrictions and you just say, hey, I'm giving you these tools, we're gonna make something, you can make whatever you want. They'll surprise you. I had a kid last summer, he had actually taken apart the lens on the camera so that it would just stick and turn certain ways, so that you would only catch a snapshot of bright light and the rest would be in kind of a halo shadow type situation. And cameras are really a precious object to me, and they break all the time. So for me to just get in there and take it apart and break it, almost on purpose, I would never think about that, but that's the first thing that he went to.
What is the purpose of creativity in urban environments specifically?
Well, I think, if you drive down into the East End around Ruskin, you can see that, it's a kind of a culturally dead zone. It's just been abandoned. And I think when you bring creativity into that space, and you, not only that, but you empower the people that live there to do that creating, they're reclaiming that space for themselves. Now it's not a parking lot full of glass and needles, or where you saw someone get mugged. It's the place where there's this beautiful mural and community garden that a student might remember. Hey, I remember I planted that tree in 3rd grade, and look how big it is now. Look how much the neighborhood has changed because of me.